Tēnā koutou kua hoki mai kia Kaupapa Rites of Passage. Ngā mihi nunui ki te hunga kua kaha tautoko mai I tēnei hōtaka no mātou. Nā reira, e te iwi, kua tae mai a kōka RhondaTibble kia mātou I tēnei rā. Hei pai kōrero I ngā kaupapa o te wā. Nā reira, e mihi nei ki a koe. Tēnei te mihi o Kaupapa Rites of Passage, ki a koe o tira nā mātou anō te honore, kua whakawātia nei I tō rātaka ki a huitahi ki a mātou I tēnei rā. Nā reira, tēnei ka mihi atu ki a koe.
Tēnā rā wāti koe, Keri. Tēnā tātou te hunga mātaki mai nā. Kia ora rā tātou I raro I a hine takurua.
Tēnā koe. Ko te nui o ngā kōrero kua rāngona e mātou, ko tiaki, ko ngā kōrero e pāna ki ngā tohi me ngā pure, ki ngā tōpito o Aotearoa, mai ngā puhi he ki whakararo nei ki a tātou, e noho nei ki te tairāwhiti. Engari, te pānui atu I o kōrero, I tō profile, he maha tonu o tūnga. Koe kite atu. E hihi ana koe te kōrero mō itahi o ina?
Oh, ata ki iei. Well, ka tika ki a pērā, he wahine au. Ko tēnei hanga, te wahine he porohita nui, nā reira, ko te mahi nui a te wahine he whakautu ki ngā momo karanga kei runga I aia. Nā reira, māku te ki atu, ko te reo whakautu o te wahine e takitini. Nā, tēnā te hanga I runga I au, e hia kēnei ngā karanga kei runga I au, kia haere atu au te mata o te whenua. Hoi I tīmata au me ki roto I te pūnaha mātauranga. Hoi anō taku wahanga tuatahi I roto I aia I te kura tuatahi. Ka reo ko pukenga Māori era I tō ia mai kua ko pukenga Pākehā ki. Nō muri rā nō mai kātahi ka uru atu I roto I te pūnaha mātauranga te kāwanatanga. Ka tahuri atu au ki te whakaako I te reo. Mua no atu I tērā, I uru ai au mutu taku tohu tuatahi, ki te tairāwhiti Polytechnic, ki te whakaako I te tiriti o Waitangi me a tātou tikanga. So, ahako kai au te reo I tipu ai au I te reo, kāre nā te kura I ho mai taku reo no te mei whakapakeke mai au roto te kāinga kōrero Māori mai taku kuia. Māgut ki atu he rau mā tinitini ke, ngā tatau e tae ana a Rhonda te whakapeke atu. Engari, ko te iho matua o au a tatau katoa, ahi ke tonu mai ki runga I tā tatau ao, te ao o ngai tāu o te Māori. Hoi ko te hohonitanga kei runga I au I oroko hia mai I roto I aku whakapapa Ngāti Parau whānau apanui. Nā reira ko taku katoa I hara mai tērā horopaki. Waku mātauranga katoa no roto I tērā whakawhenuatanga. Kāore hā koe tēnei. Kei roto I te ao kiriata, hei toha toha I aku mātauranga, hei awhitanga, I ngā mahi kiriata wahine Māori nei. Me ngā mahi tohi o roto I tēnā hanga, te ruruku, te karakia me e rātu mea. Tērā pēr I te tau 2001 I tīmata au ki te ruku atu I te hohonutanga o ngā mahi wairua. Rokohanga muano atu I tērā, he kai mātakitaki noiho au, he kai whakapā noiho au I runga I aku tūtaki ngā wheako, ka pā ki au mai te wae e rua tau tōku pakeke, hara mai rā ki aku toru te kautau pakeke. Kua ku māta, ka tōia mai au huri rauna te motu tiki te atu I ngā tōhunga, e tae e rātou te hiki I ngā mate Māori kei runga I au. Nā reira, e tika ana te ki ko te reo Māori kei runga I au, kāri hara mai mo te reo te take, hara mai mo te ao wairua ke te take. Koira ke taku aronga matua, taku whainga matua. I runga I te wehi o te mokopuna, kia moi ngā whatu o tō kuia, mā wai koe e ope ope poi poi, kei pā mai te tahi āhuatanga wiri wiri o te ao wairua, e ngā ngau nei i a tātou mai rāno tainua mai ki tēnei wā. Nā I wete ingia e au mōku ake, I te moitanga o ngā whatua taku kuia, hea hoki te wāhi ki te kreitianatanga, hea hoki te wāhi ki wā tātou ake e kia nei Hawaii hau, Hawaii pā mamao, Hawaii nui. Nā reira, mō aku taurunga I te mata o te whenua, koira aku kokenga tirohanga mōku. Engari, ko taku tumu matua, ko te aronga ke ki tā te pai krahe a te wahine. Ai. So my experience comes from lived experience. My language comes from lived experience. My family, through my father's whakapapa, were all first language speakers, and I grew up with that. At the age of 16, my nanny spoke her first words of English that made sense to me. So I was fortunate. But at the time that I was growing up, and this is 1981 to 1986, when I was at Lytton High School, I assumed everybody had nannies like me. And they used to call me Mr. Karere, which could have been seen to be a lift up or smash down, who knows? Depended on the assumption of what people were carrying. So I didn't go to kohanga, reo, te kura kaupapa, all those things. I grew up with a family who were very much fully involved in their Māoritanga of old, and everything else that our lives have to offer us. There were many times in my formative, what do you call them, adolescent years, where it was extremely isolating to know what I knew, which I took for granted that everybody else knew. So what do you mean, Rhonda? Well, do you know many 14-year-olds that go around the whole of the Tairāwhiti attending tangi and doing karanga to go on to marae for tū pāpaku?
Yeah.
That's what I did through my high school years, and I was the leader of Lytton High School for 3 years, and so pretty much all the tikanga that related there fell to me until we got female teachers. And under the auspices of Dave Para and Anaru Painga, because we didn't have a female teacher, once they made me leader, that responsibility fell to me. Never really understood why, but now I get it. And so all the adolescent things that you go through didn't quite work for me. Further to that, I grew up in a social welfare family home. My mother and father, when I turned 14, decided that they wanted to become parents of kids in care. We know that currently as Oranga Tamariki and SIPs. So we moved into a brand new Lockwood $250,000 home with 8 rooms and a rumpus room, games room and all that, 4 toilets and 7 bedrooms. And I was the eldest child of my parents. We had 107 children come through our home, and every form of neglect and abuse that you could expect to see happen to children, my family and I, we experienced firsthand. And a lot of it was mate Māori. And a lot of it was just clearly examples of parents being at their very worst to neglect their children's needs. And as a formative teenager from 14 through to 17, especially because I went to university after my 7th form year, I was involved in a lot of having to role model, not only at school but at home, certain behaviours. So the pressure of that was quite immense, but clearly I must have been up to the target because I just delivered anyway. But many of the times it meant for me to be the translator between my parents and the children, as to what was going on when Māori world realities were impacting our household, being brought in by whakapapa of rangatahi coming into our house, who had been in spaces that made them really unsafe in the wairua. So yeah, and other than that, I grew myself up and here I am today. And so I pretty much play in all of those fields. Real fields, healing fields, learning fields. I love to be involved in cutting edge learning technologies, always have been, because I've always grown up believing that we are the top of the tree and never never were we expected to be the tail, we were always expected to be the head. I don't know how come I grew up with that thinking, but I've never known it to be any different, and so that's just the expectations that I've always had for myself personally, to do my very best all the time. And I had a special thing happen for me. When I was 10 years old, my grandmother, the one that was a fluent native speaker of kōrero, she contracted lymph gland cancer. She was a 6'1", 18-stone woman, my grandmother. So my father and all his brothers are big, tall men like our grandparents. Yeah. And I was put to be her carer from the age of 10 to 13 in the absence of my father having to be with her. So I have an interesting heritage gift that both my parents, my mother from a family of 10 and my father from a family of 8, chose to sacrifice their personal lives to stay to look after their mothers here in Gisborne. And as the eldest child, that meant something special for me. Interesting, eh? So I've endured, what do you call it? A lot of fire in my life. Been through some harrowing experiences and come through all of them. And I'm so glad for them, because in order for me to walk out the agency that I have today, all of those have made me as strong as I am to continue to meet challenges that will allow me to do more for us. So interesting that it's Poutama Passage of Rights for our rangatahi. In 1985, I spoke my first whai kōrero speech at Hastings Town Hall for the Māori Women's Welfare League speech contest. I'd never actually spoken whai kōrero anywhere, but it's true to say that was my 6th form year at Lytton. It's true to say that I had attended every other manu kōrero from year 9 of the nation and of the Tairāwhiti. So when I stood to speak there, I won. But my speech topic was, and its relevance to today is, kia manawa nui tia mai ngā taitamariki. So it's fair to say a calling upon my life has always been to be able to assist children and to be straight up our children. I wasn't born for children other than children from our race, and I make no bones about being very clear that I was born for Ngāti Porou children, Māori children, and the rest of the world in that order. Why? Because what I know comes from the iho matua of Ngāti Poroutanga and Apanuitanga, of which I am a mix of, coupled with my Irish, English, and Scottish white whakapapa.
Yeah, atahua ngā kōrero. Me tō hikoitanga.
Yes.
E mihi nei kia koe. So, the Poutama Rites of Passage that we are working with here on the Tairāwhiti, we have a kohine group, and they are about 14 to 17-year-old girls.
Yes.
We've called in and introduced them to, at the moment, te tuakiri o te tangata. And when we got these girls, you know, they were very shy, very standoffish, and wanted to know why they were there. They didn't really know each other. And it wasn't probably until the Saturday night, right? You know, when everybody's had a few dinners, sit-down dinners together and had a whakawhanaungatanga, that everybody starts sharing stuff. And then it wasn't till the Sunday that they understood why we were all going to be together for the next couple of wānanga. And so over the COVID session, we had wānanga online every Sunday, and just checking in with everybody. And the conversation that has changed from our first noho to now is so clear about how much more these girls want for themselves and their peers. And it's good, and they want to learn about themselves, you know. Well, some whānau, and like yourself, having lived experiences, this is absolutely what they're wanting now. So we've called in guest speakers along the way to share whakaaro and really how we can incorporate these into our wānanga with our girls. We're about to get started with the potama, the potani, get the men's strand going as well, and then hopefully combine both of them at the end of the year to celebrate these whānau and uplift them as whānau members. So when you were talking about there's so many that I was just so interested in. You know, a lot of these girls that come to us have had a lot of trauma in one way or another, and you know, I think it's safe to say that everybody puts on a mask, puts their makeup on and carries on every day, because that's what we think people want to see. We want to see that you're strong, you're going to go out there and you're going to deliver, heia hatina, haran up. What can we say? How can we help whānau? Because it's not just within our rangatahi o taiohi. How can we help?
Koe ko te tino tānga hei whakaora I tēnā mate huakina mai e koe, ko te puna o te roimata, e pēnei ana, tērā. Toia mai te roimata I rutu wahine. Te whakaputaina e ia ona mamai, ona kea, ona hupe katoa. Kia rongongia ana e ia, ai, tika tonu, ko whakamamaitia e au. Hi cousin, ko whakamamaitia e au. E tino tāonga tērā kia hiki I te taumaha kei runga I te wahine. Tērā no te wāhanga ki ngā wahine, ko peke tai apa ke o rātou tāne, nui te ora kia riringihia ngā roimata. Aere ki te taha moana, tangihia mō, ko hai nei. So you know what, one of my things I love to do in my karanga wānanga is exactly that. I teach women how to mitigate pain.
Nice.
And I show them how easy it is when you use the taonga that belong to our tipuna, that's actually all of our taonga, but oof, do we know it?
Yeah, yes.
Oof, is anybody showing us how to do it? Oh, could we please wake up?
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that.
So koera ko te ngunguru ei, te ngunguru o te wahine, te tangi whakahuahua o te wahine. Kei roto I aia, te tuku I ngā mamai katoa. Koera te mana o te wahine, kore tai te tāne.
Yeah.
So, yes, there are many ways, and actually faster than we think.
Yeah, so he ako whakatire.
Oh, what? But while that's the case, the truth of the matter is that when you use the artifacts that belong to our female ancestry through our footprint as Māori women, you will find that the storehouse of weaponry is expanse. And problem is, most Māori women don't know how to open up the door.
Yeah.
Because their woman and the woman before them and the woman before them didn't teach them.
Yeah.
And I have to say that what I know has been because of observation. And so I don't need anyone to tell me whether I know or not. I know because I've done it. And I've done it for other people as well, to see that by lived, breed, experience, application, testing, there are the results and they're irrefutable.
Yeah, cool. That's beautiful.
Yes.
How about you just come and stay with us at a noho? That would be nice.
I think it's really important that as you have potama, you make sure that you put the equal effort into pohine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they are not the same world at all.
Yeah.
At all. And unfortunately, as the air gets choked by all of potama's needs, pohine gets left out of the picture. And honestly, it is my contention, I believe, my hypothesis, that the reason we have a prevalence of Māori women in prison today is because of this very problem. Karea hine te mōhio ko ai ia. Hine doesn't know who she is, and for as long as she keeps running around with fake ideas of who she really is, that's not marrying up with her DNA blueprint, she will always be lost.
Yeah.
Sorry, she will always be lost. And it's a hard message, but it's actually the only message. Koe
Yeah.
koe hine, te whia hine koe.
Yeah, that's good kōrero. That's really cool. And that can be applied in so many things, right?
But
I'm just, my head is ticking over right now, and I'm just like, oh, okay.
You see, if you just take the compass of Mo Peluge that everybody is keeping afloat in terms of celestial and star navigation and navigation across in Waka Ahaurua, just take that, for example, and put a hine on it. What do you get now?
Mm.
Just take the kōrero for Pōhutukawa in the 9 stars of Matariki. What do you get now?
Mm.
Just understand is that the mana of this period of time that we're in, once Matariki rises, belongs to Hine Takarua. What do you get now?
Yep.
Right. So all of that layer of understanding comes down to simple things. Do you know that we're rangi of your female Māori woman footprint? And do you know that we're nuku of your female Māori woman footprint? When you put those two universes together, ka kotahi mai koe. Just like me and you and our kauais, you've got a rangi nui, it's we're rangi, we're nuku. We didn't come here to have a nice time, we came to have a time to strive to discover who we really are. And so all of our lives will be spent trying to discover our metal of who we are and discarding parts of ourselves that are superfluous, unnecessary, so that we can build the strength of the person we've come to be. And that strength is not the same for everybody, but even if it's not being the same, it's not better. It's just us about understanding each person is called to who they're supposed to be. The question is, don't sell that mana out to someone else to tell you who it is. You define it, you design it.
Do you think this could help, you know, within our kura Māori, around the motu, you know, talking about that kōrero right now, how can that be helping more of our kura Māori?
Well, essentially, what you have to do is do this. Check me out.
Yeah.
Take these glasses off and put some new ones on.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now she can go to the side.
Yeah.
Now I want to invest in my cultural me, her. What is she? What does she look like? Where does she come from? Where is all of the heritage assets that belong to her? And where would I begin to find them?
Mm.
You see, what we need is not out there, it's in here.
Yeah.
Number one, so what does in here mean? First priority, kaua tuatahi. Could you please know who you are?
Mm.
By birth, by birth, by birth, by birth. There's 44 generations from Māui Tiki Tiki Ataranga to me sitting here right now. It would be really useful if you knew 7 from you above.
Mm.
So me and 7 up, there's 5 there. If I knew who I was based by blood across me, my 2 parents, their parents, their parents, their parents, up to 7 generations, I should get a really good indicator of the type of skill sets and capabilities and depth I might actually have by DNA. Yeah. Without having to do a DNA test.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, your strength, your ability to contend, your ability to be resilient comes through all of these stories. For example, you know, this whole idea of having one husband and that's it. E hara I te whakaro Māori tērā, no ngā Pākehā kē tēnā. Why? Because we were nomadic people and we moved all over the place. And many times our men were either killed, so things moved on. So it's not that I'm ki te whakaiti au tēnei mea te mārena, but we really need to sometimes have another look. Ki te tika tēnā whakapai. Is that actually the truth of matters? And sometimes just like ka mate te tangata, such a waste, goodbye, gone, ka ara mai he tangata anō, the point of all of that is things have to die in order for things to grow. And sometimes the biggest growth is us. And sometimes in particular unions, they do their job in a shorter time than expected, or they exceed their value in a shorter time than expected. And it's not even about whakaiti, it's just ina koe komutu te wā ia tāua.
Yeah.
Just like jobs, eh?
Yeah.
So life is always open, close, open, close. And that's the way it's supposed to be. But what it is the suffering, as Rangi and Papa did. They suffered through separation. It's not that we've lost them, because we didn't, because they're still in the pūmahara. It's the pain of the separation. But what if you change that thinking to the glory of being thankful for what was? Yeah. And what was beautiful. So many things that women need to learn. Little woman, you know, woman my age and older woman, because all of those stages of becoming require you to be a different woman with different knowings. I'm always in the space of inquiring from women in their 60s, 70s and 80s. So now that you're in your 80s, Auntie, what do you think is the reason for being in your 80s? What can you as a woman expect there, given that you've already got 80 years behind you? So you now, Mum, as a 70-year-old woman, 73, what does it mean for you to be 70 in difference to you being 60, 50, 40? Yes? Because they're all growth stages, just like the Rauhara Keke. And we have to understand, so, okay, when you take the concept of passage of rights, every 10 years has got a new passage of rights.
Yes.
Right. So this don't be fixed with your concept of rites of passage only belonging to birth and death rituals. Oh, there's a whole lot of living rituals required as well.
Absolutely. I only lived 3 of those. Yeah. Hoki mai ki au tōna wā. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool kōrero. And I think too that you know, ki te whakarongo ki tahi o ngā pūrākau mō ngā tipuna, you know, toko maha ngā hoa kua moia. And then comparing it to today, like I have these conversations with my teenagers in the house, and they're like, you know, it was all right for this tipuna to have, you know, all the wives and all the uri and stuff like that. What's the difference with today? You
there
know,
isn't.
why? Well, yeah.
It's the doing is different.
Yeah. Yeah. How that's gone about.
And the conditioning, eh? So that was the conditioning of that time. The conditioning we have now is quite different. But the really interesting thing is you have to ask, is the conditioning essentially ours, or is the conditioning from another race? Yeah.
And that's the weti, eh? That's,
yeah.
That wānanga. Because without the conversation of all these things, everybody still sits in their tūru with the thought of this is how it's meant to be. Because we've read it, we've seen it on TV, and if it's in a pamphlet, kua pono.
And everything is to be tried and tested, and it must come from that space. Why? Because we're mokopuna of ma and ui. See, maui, pure inquiry, maui, good gracious. That's the tupua that sits in the tahito that sits in all of us, is his mokopuna. So we must try and test everything for its verification and validation. Is that true for me? And how do I know? You see, most of us are just running around living off the steam of what someone else said. Good gracious, get your own story and run your own steam. Mama nā te korohua o etahi atu. Tiki nā te wāhau ake. Kia mōhio mai koe ki tō pane e whakawhiti ana kiwhea.
Yeah. Yes.
Kua kei te hoi ai tō waka. Kua hoatu ke koe i te rākau urungi ki tangata ke, hei urungi i tō waka, whakamita atu. Parai a tērā, hiki nāki.
Yeah. Mai wā no tō waka e hoi.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So, ka pēnei ngā kōrero, ngā wānanga i o wānanga karanga?
Ai, tai hoa, ka whakātu ai. Ka tare au te whakātu te tahi tuhinga, ki te mai koe. Tai hoa. Righty ho. Kei konei ki te karanga mō ka tīmataria aku wahine te hau mai ki roto i taku whare karanga, ne? So whakarongo mai ki tēnei. Haere mai rā e te tini o hine, haere mai rā koutou, mātou ngā whakāta, piki mai, kake mai rā. Koutou ngā reo tīwaha o te kānoi uhae. Kia huia mai ki te hu o te oro hine, kia huri kāwe kātu ki te reo wairua, ki te ranga wairua ngā te hiere i toia mai e. Haere mai rā ki te pāpunitanga o te aroha ngoi ngoi mā. Te hunga i pakeke mai ki tēnei waihotanga iho. Nā koutou, nā tātou i tangi. E heke. Ki te ranga e ki te whakaki. Ki te aronga mai o te mātau. Te aronui atu e hine e. Nau nei te arai whiwhi, nau nei te arai rawea o i o e oa e hine e. Nā, kei roto i tērā karanga whakataki i taku rōpu ka kitea mai e rātou, ko rātou te whakapāpunitanga mai o te aroha o rātou mātua tīpuna. Nā reira te tēnei o ngā āhuatanga ka hei pū ki runga i ahine. Wai ahine, ko koe ahine. Ka kitea mai koe i tēnei taha taku tohu, mo taku kamupene o hine Waiora-nui. He praurangi pautama tēnei. He ao ki au i tikina atu i te praurangi pautama, no te mea mōku, ko te kawanga tikanga wahine tērā. Nā te ahau e mōhio, nā taku tīpuna rōpata waha, i tukua i ngā kai whakairo. Ia te kihirini mā, kia hangaia kia tikina atu ngā wahine, mai ngā tukutuku kia whakairongia ki te rākau. Nā, he tahuritanga tērā i te tau 1880 mātahi, he kawanga wahine. Hea rōpata waha ki te atu tēnei āhuatanga o runga i te wahine e kia mai a Ngāti Porou wahine kai hautu. Koina ahau e mea atu, ko te taonga puiaki o te ao Māori, ko te wahine. Ko te taonga puiaki anō o te ao Māori, ko te tāne. Re te tonu ki ngā tihi tapu o tā tātou mai ngā hikurangi. Te piotai ki hutone o hauku, ka kotahi mai te ao. Tō pātai ka eketia, what happens? Anei, ka tirohia te ao orunga, te ao ōraro, I roto i te āhuatanga o te kauwairunga, ka pā ki te wahine, me te kauwairaro ka pā ki te wahine. Tā rā, nā whenua te tēnā, ne? Kia ora. Me whakaputau I e rai nai, ne? Stop. Tai hoa. Screen sharing member too. Kei te raru. Ara, kia ki atu ki ata haua, ne? Ara.
Lovely.
Whau, e ka kitea mai koe, mōku tēnei me te tohi, he titonga, kamatu.
Okay, sweet.
Titonga. Ma te ahau e mōhio. Marama ke te kite atu. Wete ngia ngā titonga katoa, te tohi, te pure, te ruruku, te waituhi, te karakia. Ara, there's a form, a function and a purpose to every single one. Know the form, the function and purpose, apply the medicine.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really that simple. I don't know why it has to be made like, you know, got to go to the back of the universe and Star Trek through all the constellations to find it. It's not like that at all. It's doing right here.
The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, just ridiculous. However, in saying that, I've had the great fortune to utilise tohi and pure, not only with the birthing of my own children and pure te whakawāte a woman on my karanga wānanga, and I find it easy to compose because composition is easy for me because I've spent a long time in composition. So if I was composing back as 11-year-old and here I am as 51, so 40 years of composing, we should be good at something.
And I think too, being able to experience and see things and te rongo, you know, ki te puku, ki te uma, ka rongo koe.
Well, I was in Raranga Wānanga on the weekend and we had this beautiful takapau wharanui brought in and shared with us from a particular family, and it belonged to great-great-grandparents. The patterns on it were just exceptional. But what was really neat about having that taonga come in was when they finished, because everybody in the room is full of reo Pākehā and wanting, in the space of wanting their Māoritanga, I felt that it was necessary for me to mihi to the takapau and the kōrero that came with it. And so I did that. Moe koe ka tangi ngā wahine. Because sometimes when you introduce ourselves to our things in English, there's not the appropriate big opening and closing. So you have to give mana to those things. And much of the time, the reo karanga te wahine, te reo pāua te wahine ka āhei te hiki atu. You see, we're not confined to particular formats that men are in terms of kōrero because we're hine.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's the same too, you know, you must learn to understand and in your own life craft and warcraft and to discover what is Hine's roles for you. And when I say that, what I'm talking about is there's not enough of us as Māori women who are actually investing ourselves in becoming living practitioners of how to take space in Māori spaces. And that's the space I really want to encourage, because I think as we've become less capable and less brave and less full of courage to take our reo on board and utilize it in all the different fields it can be used in, including tohi, we minimize the potency of who and what we are as Māori women. So I'd really like to think that as well as igniting rites of passage, that we remember that as Māori women, young women, middle-aged women and older women, the first protocol is get your language. Get that language under your belt and then get into Māori theatre. And when I say that, what I really mean is hare tu koe ki roto I ngā wāhi kei reira te Māori e noho Māori ana. He reo kei te haere, he tikanga kei te haere, e rā ākatanga. Ke kitea mai koe te takoto te whenua. You need to be involved in a Māori context in order to understand properly how to wield the sword of your Māoritanga. So giving rights is one thing, but it's an incomplete system if you don't take the whole system. And so if there's anything that I think you should work mostly on doing is making sure that you get the access code correct to our world. And the access code is actually our language. And to do so, you have to have courage. So really promote the importance of getting our reo because the spiritual dimensions of our culture aren't easily accessed through English. So again, you know, we've never had a better time to be able to have access to learning the reo because of the multiple approaches being delivered today. We can't make excuses for not having it anymore.
Yeah.
Because its accessibility is much greater than it's ever been in any other time. Will te reo Māori look the same as it did in my grandmother's time? It already doesn't. Should I switch that? No, I won't. But like all cultures, we'll take some things that existed in the old days and re-image them to fit the conditions of now. And that's what every generation does. It goes like this. Oh yeah, that condition, then this reanga, then this one. Oh, I like that one. I'll take that and I'll re-image it here and put it back in. And so if we understand that, just like our whakapapa, I have children at mokopuna, so there's already 2 generations underneath me. They won't follow my footstep, and they shouldn't have to, because they have their own marvellous, majestic footstep to follow. Some of my stuff they will use next, and some of it they won't. And maybe some of my mokopunas will completely not do anything that Nanny does, and that's okay, because only those with the heart to will. And so I say to all girls wanting to be involved in reclaiming taonga Māori, including passages of rights, you will have to become Braveheart. And you will have to have conversations with yourself about how deep you want to go. Because our world is deep. The world of Hine is a deep world. And we know that because if we were to create a compass, it goes like this. Hine titama, hine nui te po. Oh, there's a long way between them too. Hine raumati, hine takarua. Oh, there's a big divide between there. So everything, put that all together, there's 360 degrees of being a Māori woman. So how do you measure yourself in terms of who you're wanting to become, and also saying, where am I? In reclaiming myself as a Māori woman. So all these become relevant questions for us as Māori women, eh? You see, everything that's in our world is properly accessed by having the reo. So understand that when you don't have the reo, it's like saying, I've got a bazooka and it's fired up to 10% and it's missing a whole 90% because the reo is not present. And I encourage that because our taonga are meant to be discussed in our language and understood through our language. But in the absence of having the language, then you get to miss parts of what's actually sitting there. You know, if it wasn't that case, then people like Elston Best and them who typefaced what our tikanga were would have the complete say, but they don't, because the part that's missing is it's not their culture and it's not their language. So you see how it all works out in the end? And the other thing is, for all of us that have whakapapa Māori, the fact that we have an ancestral footprint is the first requirement. And for those that don't, it becomes a heart language. You can never knock somebody for having a heart desire for our language who doesn't have the blood component. And the other one is the umbrella that protects us all is ko te kawa tuatahi manakitia, aha ko iti, aha ko rahi. So
rawi tēnā. I think for probably about 6 years I was an adult teaching mo te reo, and the desire that whānau would walk in the door with te kōrero I te reo Māori was huge, and a lot of our own Māori whānau were nervous and scared to learn, one coming back to learn and having bad experiences at school, but also afraid of people judging them, you know, whether it'll be right or wrong. And I guess, you know, with our, you know, we've got rangatahi, we've got tamariki, we've got mokopuna, where you could walk down the street and you can have kōrero with, that's the fear that was in a lot of people, was being corrected by the younger ones, because it was a whole new world, whereas some of the other whānau that weren't necessarily Māori, they would welcome it because they wanted to be corrected. But still encouraging all our whānau, you know, he taonga tēnei, this is absolutely our taonga to pick up and carry on with.
It truly is.
Yeah.
So in my experience, I've seen that many times over. I call it the ICU protocol. So ICU being intensive care unit, also I see you, yes, and your mataku. So those are the first things that have to be unpacked for adult learners of the reo that happen to have whakapapa Māori. So you see, in years past, the main pedagogy for teaching anything was to beat you into submission. And many Māori received that. That's the reason why their grandparents or great-grandparents didn't speak Māori, because ka haua ki te rākau, eh? So we that are reo teachers now, it's really imperative that we make sure that the way we teach is encouraging and growth related, eh? And looking at how people can measure their growth in the reo to feel a level of success, because all things can be measured to success, whether that be with numbers or whether that be with the way I feel about it. And so what should be happening in every reo class is everybody is getting sufficient challenge, and we call that comprehensible input +1, and also sufficient practice time to make sense here, 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 and then to produce here. Unfortunately, my observations have shown that our reo has become petri dished. And what I mean by that is we're teaching our reo in unnatural circumstances. School has become the petri science dish by which we go to school to learn the reo, but it's devoid of the real natural contexts. I can say that because I was raised where reo was the language and the medium of instruction in everything, outside cutting the lawn, cutting meat, going to get wood, making gardens, making puddings, make the bed, everything, yes? But now we create little laboratories and we sit in classrooms to do the reo, devoid of the natural contexts of how reo actually happens. I was mind-blown to observe at a particular wānanga a set of kura kaupapa teachers who came in who were just mind-blown to see kānga pungarihu being the teaching tool and all the reo that goes with it. Because I just assumed that they would know, but they'd never been exposed to any of that. And so you take things for granted, right? I certainly did. I just thought, well, how come you say no? Oh my God, that's right, because you've only learnt your reo inside the context of the kura, which is devoid of what happens in the community. How do I share Kaupapa Māori rites of passage while still learning my reo? Is it my place? Absolutely. The thing about sharing rites of passage is the conscientization of others about it. You see, every culture has rites of passage, and this important work of Potama rites of passage is critical to helping our young people think about rites of passage in their lives. So I think every young person who has a desire and a passion to talk about kaupapa Māori and rites of passage should get upon highlighting it. Why? Because we haven't got enough spaces where that kōrero is being put there anyway to prick the conscience of others. And you never know whom introducing that concept to might actually just be exactly the seed that they've been looking for without them recognising. I might need some of the sacredness. Tapu kei roto i ngā ritenga o te tangata ni. Ai, koina. Kia ora.
Nā reira, kua tai tāua ki te mutunga o te haora nei, o tēnei kōrero i tēnei rangi. rawe te rongo, me te menei, he mihi nui ki a koe kua tuarihia mai o kōrero, I tō huarahi I a koe pakeke ai, ngā kōrero mo tō kuia, te whakatipu, te tini me te mano ki roti tō whare. O tira, tēnā whakapapa nā māu I heke iho nei ki a koe, o tira tō huarahi whāngai I te reo karanga, te whakamana I ngā kōhine. Kia mōhio ai tātou, ko ai tātou nohia. Nā reira, e mihi ana ki a koe, kāre nei ngā mihi e mutu nei ki a koe I tīnei rangi. Nō mātou te whiwhi, nō mātou te honore.
Tēnā koe kiri, tēnā koe te kaupapa I toia mai tātou.
Papai, a tōna wāpea ka tūtaki anō tātou.
Karawe tēnā. Noho iho mai rai ngā manaakitanga ngā mātua tīpuna.
A koe hoki. Tēnā koe.
E kuna.
Aira.